INFJs are often called the most mysterious of all personalities. They notice things others miss, they sense truths you're hiding, and they understand more about you than you'd ever guess. But here's the twist. They rarely say it out loud. Instead, they quietly observe, store what they see, and let their intuition guide them. In this video, we're uncovering 10 things INFJs know about you, but will never openly admit. Stick around until the end, because the last one will completely change the way you see INFJs forever. If you're ready to step inside the INFJ's mind, hit that subscribe button and let's dive in. They know when you're lying, even about small things. One of the most unsettling things about INFJs is their ability to spot dishonesty, even when it's subtle or seemingly harmless. You might think you're telling a white lie to protect their feelings, or maybe you're leaving out a detail you don't want them to know. What you don't realize is that the INFJ has already picked up on it. They don't need proof, receipts, or long explanations. Their intuition instantly registers when something doesn't add up. INFJs are naturally tuned into patterns of behavior, tone of voice, and the emotional current underneath your words. If what you're saying doesn't match the energy you're giving off, it triggers an immediate red flag in their mind. For example, if you insist you're fine, but your eyes carry sadness, or your energy feels heavy, the INFJ quietly notes the contradiction. If you tell a story that has small inconsistencies, they don't always call you out right away, but they store the information for later. What makes INFJs unique is that they don't just notice lies, they feel them. It's less about the words and more about the vibration behind them. Even the smallest attempt at dishonesty can feel like a betrayal because INFJs place such a high value on authenticity. This doesn't mean they expect perfection or radical honesty at all times, but when they sense a lie, it creates a silent distance. Their trust is fragile, and once it's shaken, it's almost impossible to rebuild. The unnerving part is that INFJs often won't confront you directly. They may let the lies slide on the surface, nodding and smiling as if they believe you, but internally, the shift has already begun. They've filed the dishonesty away, and it silently influences how they see you moving forward. Over time, enough small lies add up to a wall you won't even notice until the INFJ has already pulled back completely. This quiet, piercing awareness is what makes people feel exposed around INFJs. They know when you're lying, even if you'll never hear them say it out loud. They sense the emotions you're trying to hide. One of the most disarming abilities INFJs possess is their uncanny sensitivity to emotions, even the ones you work hardest to keep buried. You can put on a smile, act cheerful, or insist you're fine, but beneath the surface, an INFJ is already reading the truth. They don't just notice obvious signals like a sad expression or nervous body language. They feel the subtle undercurrents in your energy that betray what you're really experiencing. This happens because INFJs are natural, emotional empaths. They absorb the emotional vibe of a room the way most people breathe air. If you're anxious, they'll feel the tension before you even speak. If you're angry, but suppressing it, they'll sense the heaviness in your tone. And if you're pretending to be happy while secretly feeling broken inside, they'll pick up on the quiet cracks in your energy. The remarkable and sometimes unnerving part is that INFJs rarely call it out directly. Instead, they let you reveal your truth in your own time. They'll offer comfort in subtle ways, maybe by shifting the topic to something soothing or by giving you space when they sense you need it. This quiet support often feels uncanny to others, like the INFJ just knew without being told. However, this sensitivity can also create tension in relationships. Many people feel exposed when an INFJ sees through their mask, especially if they weren't ready to admit their emotions to themselves. It can leave them feeling vulnerable, almost as if the INFJ reached into their inner world without permission. For the INFJ, it's not about intrusion, it's simply second nature. Over time, this ability to sense hidden emotions becomes both a gift and a burden. INFJs can bring healing and deep connection when they use it with compassion, but they also carry the weight of emotions that aren't theirs. Still, their awareness is rarely wrong. Even when you hide it, an INFJ knows what you're feeling, they just won't always say it out loud. They can tell when you're pretending to be someone you're not. INFJs have a rare ability to see straight through pretense. While many people can be fooled by confidence tricks, fake personas, or exaggerated stories, INFJs almost instinctively know when someone is acting out of alignment with who they really are. This doesn't come from judgment, but from an intuitive recognition of subtle discrepancies between what you show and what you truly feel. When someone tries to project an image, the overly confident friend masking insecurity, the agreeable colleague hiding resentment, or even the romantic partner pretending to be stronger than they feel, INFJs notice the cracks. They catch the mismatch between words and body language, between the energy someone gives off and the story they're telling. For instance, you might say, "You're totally fine," while giving a smile, but your eyes flicker with unease. Most people miss it. The INFJ, this ability often leaves others feeling both seen and exposed. Pretenders may feel uncomfortable because the INFJ doesn't play along with the mask. Instead, they respond to the real emotion underneath. They may offer reassurance when you're clearly insecure, even if you tried to act confident. Or they may quietly pull away when they sense your friendliness is actually manipulation. This makes INFJs difficult to fool, which can frustrate people who rely on charm or masks to get by. What's fascinating is that INFJs rarely confront this directly. They won't say, "I know you're lying," or "stop pretending." Instead, they simply adjust their behavior based on what they see. That's why people often feel unsettled around INFJs, because they realize they're being responded to at a deeper level than words. Over time, this trait becomes a powerful filter. It allows INFJs to separate genuine souls from performers. They won't invest deeply in someone who hides too much behind a mask, but they'll give their full loyalty to those who dare to be authentic. In a world where so many people put on performances, INFJs quietly but surely recognize the difference, and that knowledge shapes every relationship they keep. They notice patterns in your behavior before you do. One of the most underestimated abilities of INFJs is their gift for pattern recognition, especially when it comes to human behavior. While most people only see isolated events, a single decision, a casual comment, or a mood swing, INFJs connect these dots into a bigger picture. They don't just notice what you do, they recognize how often you do it, why you do it, and what it reveals about you. For example, you might think no one notices that you always get restless before making a big decision, or that you withdraw every time you feel criticized. To you, these seem like random habits, but to an INFJ, they form a repeating pattern that says more about your personality and fears than you realize. Over time, they can anticipate your next move, not because they're guessing, but because they've seen the cycle play out before. This pattern spotting ability often makes INFJs feel almost prophetic. Friends might be shocked when an INFJ predicts the collapse of a relationship or the outcome of a conflict, but from the INFJ's perspective, the signs were clear all along. They noticed the little shifts in tone, the repeated avoidance of responsibility, or the subtle cracks in communication that pointed to the inevitable. What makes this even more powerful is that INFJs don't just notice negative patterns, they also see your strengths long before you do. They can recognize potential, the hidden talent you dismiss, the creative spark you're afraid to explore, or the resilience you don't yet believe you have. Often, they'll encourage you toward growth by pointing out patterns of strength you hadn't seen in yourself. But here's the paradox. ENFJs rarely tell you outright that they've mapped your patterns. Instead, they quietly adjust how they interact with you. They might step back to avoid being pulled into a destructive cycle, or they might nudge you forward when they sense your hidden potential. You may never realize it, but their silent awareness has already shaped the way they relate to you. This is why INFJs can feel so unsettling, because even when you think you're unpredictable, they've already seen the pattern you're following. They know when you're about to leave or drift away. One of the most unsettling abilities INFJs have is their uncanny sense of when someone is about to pull away, long before that person admits it to themselves. While most people take relationships, friendships, or connections at face value, INFJs read the undercurrent. They feel the subtle shift in your tone, the hesitation in your words, the lack of warmth in your presence. What looks invisible to others registers like a loud signal to them. You might think you're hiding it well, that you're still showing up, still talking, still laughing, but INFJs notice the small cracks. Maybe it's the way you no longer share the little details of your day or how you stop asking them questions in return. Maybe it's the fraction of a second longer it takes you to reply or the lack of sincerity in a smile. To others, these things mean nothing. To an INFJ, they form a pattern that whispers, "This person is leaving." This awareness often hurts them deeply because they sense abandonment before it happens. Imagine feeling the ache of loss before the goodbye is even spoken. That's the burden INFJs carry. They anticipate emotional drift long before closure arrives. Sometimes they even withdraw first, not out of indifference, but as a way to protect themselves from the pain they know is coming. The irony is that many people don't realize how closely an INFJ has been tracking the health of the connection. When the INFJ finally detaches, others are shocked, but for the INFJ, it was inevitable. They had already felt the distance growing for weeks or months, and by the time they step back, they've already grieved the loss in silence. But here's where it gets even more powerful. This ability isn't just about sadness. It also gives INFJs a kind of emotional foresight. They know which relationships to hold on to tightly and which ones to let go of with peace. They don't waste years chasing someone who's already halfway out the door because they've already felt the goodbye before it's spoken. This is why INFJs often seem mysterious, as if they can predict the end of connections. The truth is, they don't predict it, they feel. They pick up on your fears and insecurities instantly. One of the most powerful and sometimes unsettling abilities INFJs carry is their natural radar for human vulnerability. While most people only notice what's on the surface, INFJs scan beneath the mask. They don't just hear what you're saying, they feel the emotional charge underneath. And in that space, your fears and insecurities become almost impossible to hide. For example, if you're pretending to be confident in a room, others may be fooled by your loud voice, big gestures, or sharp words. But the INFJ notices the tiny cracks, the way your eyes shift when you speak, the tension in your tone, the hesitation before a laugh. These subtle signals scream louder than words to an INFJ, and they instinctively understand the gap between who you present to the world and who you really are inside. This isn't about judgment. It's about intuition paired with empathy. Because INFJs don't just notice insecurity, they feel it in their own body. They carry the weight of your fear as if it were their own. That's why being around them can feel so exposing. It's like standing in front of a mirror that reflects back the parts of yourself you'd rather keep hidden. But here's the paradox. INFJs rarely call it out directly. They won't embarrass you by saying, "I know you're insecure about this." Instead, they respond with subtle kindness, encouragement, or patience. They give you space to breathe, to feel seen without shame. Yet, make no mistake, they've already identified what you're trying to conceal. This ability can be both comforting and terrifying. Comforting because it means an INFJ can support you in ways no one else can. Terrifying because it means you can't fake confidence, loyalty, or authenticity around them. They'll sense it instantly. And this is where their quiet power lies. When an INFJ knows your fears and insecurities, they don't weaponize it unless pushed too far. Most of the time, they use it as a bridge for deeper connection. But if you cross them, they know exactly where your weak spots are. That knowledge makes them far harder to manipulate than most people realize. They can sense hidden motives behind your words. When most people listen, they take words at face value. But INFJs aren't most people. They don't just hear what you're saying, they tune into why you're saying it. Every word, every pause, every shift in tone carries weight. And this is where their unique gift comes into play. The ability to detect the hidden motives beneath someone's carefully chosen words. For example, if you say, "I'm just trying to help," most will accept it as truth. An INFJ, however, pays attention to what's behind the statement. Is there genuine concern, or is there subtle control, a need to impose authority, or a desire to manipulate the outcome? While others are comforted by surface-level niceties, the INFJ hears the faint hum of intent vibrating underneath. This doesn't come from suspicion alone. It comes from a blend of empathy, intuition, and pattern recognition. INFJs notice when your words don't match your body language, when your praise feels overly rehearsed, or when your advice feels more like a veiled criticism. They've studied people deeply enough to know that motives often betray themselves in the smallest cracks. And the unsettling part, you probably won't realize they've caught on. INFJs rarely confront motives directly in the moment. Instead, they file the information away silently. They may smile, nod, and let you keep talking, but internally, they've already mapped your real agenda. Over time, this allows them to see patterns others miss: repeated manipulation, self-serving behavior, or insincerity wrapped in kindness. This ability makes INFJs incredibly hard to fool. You can't easily flatter them into trust, guilt them into compliance, or talk them into something that doesn't feel right. If your motives are pure, they'll know. If they're not, they'll know even faster. At their best, this skill helps INFJs protect themselves and others from being deceived. At their worst, it makes them withdraw quietly from people they no longer trust without needing to explain why. To the outside world, it may look like they vanished without reason, but the truth is, they already uncovered the hidden game long before anyone else even realized it was being played. They know when you're using them, even if they don't call it out. One of the most misunderstood abilities of INFJs is how quickly they recognize when someone is taking advantage of them. Most people assume INFJs are so kind, so giving, and so eager to help that they don't notice when the relationship becomes one-sided. But the truth is, they notice almost immediately. Their intuition, combined with their deep empathy, makes them incredibly sensitive to subtle shifts in energy. When someone only reaches out in moments of need, only compliments them when they want a favor, or only shows affection when there's something to gain, the INFJ doesn't miss it. They might not call it out on the spot, but they quietly file it away, watching to see if the pattern repeats. At first, they may give you the benefit of the doubt. INFJs want to believe the best in people, so they'll tell themselves that maybe you're just busy, maybe you're having a hard week, or maybe you didn't realize how often you take without giving back. But once the pattern becomes clear, their perspective changes. And here's where INFJs differ from most. They rarely explode in anger or confront someone with accusation. Instead, they slowly begin to withdraw. The warmth that once felt unconditional starts to fade. Their responses become shorter, their presence less available, and their energy harder to access. To the person using them, this shift can feel sudden, almost shocking. One day, the INFJ seemed supportive, compassionate, and always there. The next, there's distance, silence, and a kind of emotional wall that feels impossible to climb. What's really happening is that the INFJ has recognized the truth. They were never valued for who they are, only for what they could give. And once they reach that realization, they rarely return to the same level of openness. This is what makes INFJs so powerful yet so underestimated. They may not expose you with words, but their quiet withdrawal says more than any confrontation ever could. By protecting their energy, they teach an unspoken lesson: that kindness is not weakness. And using an INFJ always comes at a cost. They recognize when you don't truly value them. INFJs might not always say it out loud, but they can feel when they're being taken for granted. They have a natural ability to sense the subtle shifts in how people treat them, whether it's the lack of effort in a conversation, the absence of appreciation for their support, or the way someone only shows up when they need something. While most people can overlook these small signs, INFJs notice them instantly and quietly keep score. One of their biggest strengths is the depth of their empathy. They pour energy, time, and heart into the people they care about, often going out of their way to make others feel seen and supported. But when that energy isn't reciprocated, or when they realize someone values them only for convenience, it hits them hard. INFJs might not confront the issue directly at first, but inside, they're registering the imbalance. They see clearly when they're not a priority in someone's life, even if they never admit it. What makes this even more powerful is that INFJs don't demand much in return. They're not the type to constantly ask for attention, validation, or endless praise. What they want instead is respect, consistency, and genuine appreciation. So when they sense that someone isn't truly valuing them, or worse, is exploiting their kindness, they don't explode in anger. They go quiet. That silence is their way of pulling back their energy and testing whether the other person even notices the absence. Over time, this quiet withdrawal becomes permanent. If an INFJ concludes that they aren't valued, they will slowly detach, giving less of their emotional presence and attention. The person on the other end may not even realize what's happening until the INFJ is already gone. And once an INFJ decides you don't truly see their worth, there's rarely a second chance. This hidden recognition is part of what makes INFJs so complex. They can love deeply, but the moment they realize that love isn't respected, they retreat. Not with drama, not with shouting, but with the quiet, powerful certainty that they deserve more. They understand you better than you realize, but choose silence instead. One of the most unsettling truths about INFJs is just how deeply they can understand people, often more than those people understand themselves. Through their blend of intuition, empathy, and keen observation, INFJs are able to see into the hidden layers of someone's personality, piecing together motives, insecurities, desires, and fears with startling accuracy. They don't need you to explain yourself fully because they've already connected the dots. But here's the twist. Most of the time, they never say it out loud. Why? Because INFJs understand that exposing everything they see can overwhelm people. Imagine being told your hidden fears, your unspoken intentions, or the reasons behind your choices by someone who just knows. Most people aren't ready to face that kind of truth. So instead, INFJs remain silent, keeping their insights tucked away while quietly adjusting how they interact with you. It's not about manipulation, it's about self-protection and sparing others from discomfort. This silence can be both comforting and unsettling. On one hand, it creates a sense of mystery. You feel safe around an INFJ without fully knowing why. On the other, it's unnerving to realize later just how much they understood without ever mentioning it. They may know when you're lying, when you're afraid, or when you're secretly hurting, yet they'll often wait for you to reveal it on your own. Their silence is a form of respect. INFJs would rather give you the space to open up at your own pace than force you into vulnerability. But make no mistake, their quiet doesn't mean ignorance. It means they've already seen the truth and decided not to confront you with it unless absolutely necessary. This is why people often describe INFJs as mystical or hard to read, when in reality, they're the ones doing the reading. They understand far more than they let on, and their restraint in keeping that knowledge to themselves is part of what makes them so powerful and so intimidating. The truth is, INFJs see far more than they'll ever reveal. They know your secrets, your struggles, your hidden motives, and even when they stay silent, their silence is never ignorance, it's power. If you've ever had an INFJ in your life, you've already felt this quiet intensity, the way they can know you better than you know yourself. So here's my question to you. Have you ever underestimated an INFJ only to realize later they saw through everything? Share your experience in the comments. I'd love to hear your story. And if this video opened your eyes, don't just click away. Hit subscribe, turn on the notification bell, and join me here on Brainy for more deep dives into the psychology of INFJs, Sigmas, and the hidden sides of the human mind. Because trust me, this is only the beginning.